Hello and welcome to another episode of Odesk Webinar Live. My name is, as usual, Farhad Abdulhaq, and I'm great to be with you all today. Today, we are commemorating the World International Literacy Day, which aims to promote the importance of literacy as a matter of dignity and human rights, and to advance the literacy agenda towards a more literate and sustainable society. I humbly acknowledge the privilege of having access to early literacy education, knowing there are millions of people who don't have, and due to COVID, millions of more who might have lost. So today we have a very interesting speaker. Her name is Afia. She's the co-founder of Studenthubgh. It's a fascinating edtech company based in Ghana, which has to date offered career and leadership training to over 200 tertiary students from over 24 African countries. In addition, Student Hub GIAT has grown a youth community of over 1,500,000 in the past 2 years. Afia has also worked as an African Business Development Manager for Bridge for Billions, where she collaborates with various development agencies and ecosystem builders to develop entrepreneurship programs for African countries. So I would like to welcome Afia. How are you?
Hi everyone. Hi, Saka. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for having us at such an important day, and it's such a pleasure to have you. You have a startup that's making a difference in this area, and I would love to have our audience very engaged today because uh, it encompasses so many areas: the literacy, what we understand, and how it affects us, especially post COVID. The dynamics have completely changed how we
Yeah.
execute projects and how it affects us. Afi, I just want you to start off by asking how, what are the main types of literacy skills do we have and do we need to know, and how your startup is helping achieve those literacy skills?
Okay. So to start off, I'm going to go back a bit. And the interesting thing is, I believe literacy has changed a lot because initially, and I think most of you will agree that when we were growing up, we defined literacy as the ability to read and write. So literacy just simply meant reading, writing, having that ability to speak your native language and another language and write in it as well. And that was the definition that we grew up with. Personally, I think my journey to literacy was an interesting one. There is a quote that really defined my own literacy journey, and I'd love to share it with you if I can. Just a minute. Okay, so the quote is, that's the thing about books. They let you travel without moving your feet. So this quote was really impactful for me when I was growing up in my own literacy journey because I understood from this that you didn't have to be confined to your environment or where you grew up. You didn't have to be limited. Your knowledge didn't have to be limited to what you could see around you. You could expand your knowledge. You could become so much more and you could learn so much more simply by reading by listening to audiobooks and reading books written by people from around the world. And that for me was really spearheaded my desire for literacy, for education, and for reading. So growing up, I was a bit of an obsessive reader, if I should say. Most of my classmates from when I was in high school and primary were always having issues with me because I would take every book that was available and just devour the book as quickly as I could. Now, as I'm growing up, I still love to read, I still love to learn. I really like to describe myself as a lifelong learner. But the way I read and I learn have changed a lot. Now I read and I learn by listening to audio books a lot, by watching a lot of webinars and sessions like this, by watching movies. You might say that that's just an excuse to watch to binge on Netflix, but no. I think movies can also be a great way to learn a lot about life, about different cultures, and all that. So I'm saying my literacy journey just to get you to understand that literacy changes a lot. And the way we define literacy when we were young is completely different from the way literacy is defined right now. So a few years back, literacy was being able to read and write. Now, in the 21st century, literacy is totally different. And so, in the 21st century, there are lots of ways that we define literacy, but I like to highlight these three because I think they are quite interesting. So, we have basic literacy, digital literacy, and then intercultural literacy. Now, basic literacy is just what I mentioned earlier. So it's about having those reading and writing skills. We can admit, though, that it has changed a lot, and the way that we used to read and write, and the way we used to learn how to read and write, or the way we used to learn communication, speaking, sharing your ideas with others has changed a lot. The way we used to learn has changed a lot. So basic literacy skills is still important, but the way it is consumed, the way it is shared, the way it is taught has changed a lot in the 21st century. But even more, another important literacy skill for the 21st century is digital literacy. And I'm sure you can all agree with me, especially in post-COVID, how important digital literacy is. And I'll love you to explore digital literacy beyond, using Facebook or LinkedIn or Google and researching online. Digital literacy has to do with being able to understand how to conduct yourself with digital tools, being able to understand how to how to be online in a safe way. So online safety skills is a type of digital literacy, and it's important that we are taught how to be save online, how to share information about ourselves online, how to not become too vulnerable and put ourselves in danger as we interact and we communicate and we learn online. So online safety skill is a type of digital literacy that is important. And then we have still under digital literacy, we definitely have some functional skills that we have to bear in mind. So we are all picking up functional digital literacy skills. So this tool that we are using, for example, being able to stream a webinar online, that's an example of a digital literacy skill. Being able to blog, being able to use basic tools like Google Docs and Google Sheets, Google Slides. Those are basic functional skills. But even beyond those, we have functional skills that are very relevant depending on your sector of interest or the career path that you are on. There may be some important digital skills that are relevant for that career. So for marketers, for example, marketing has changed a lot, and now one of the functional skills to be a successful marketer is digital marketing. You need to know how to promote products and businesses online, and you need to know how to write content and share them online. So these are some functional digital literacy skills that are really important. Then there's also the cultural and social understanding when you are online. You are interacting with people from around the world, people with different cultural backgrounds, and it's really relevant to understand how to manage these conversations in a way that is right and that is correct. So digital literacy is very important in the 21st century, and we need to be continuously learning how to upgrade these skills. So now being a lifelong learner doesn't just mean continuing to read after school. It also means always being abreast of the latest technology that applies to your field, that applies to learning, to educating, and always upgrading yourself on that. Then, of course, we have intercultural literacy. I mentioned a bit of it when I was talking about digital literacy, but intercultural literacy is literally the capacity to identify with people from different cultural backgrounds, people from different countries. So it includes learning more languages. It's an important part of intercultural literacy. And later I will talk about how there are various tools now that makes that so much more possible. So learning more languages, understanding different cultures, how different cultures interact, how different cultures interpret various words and various scenarios, even if it's the same English language, how different cultures interpret various body languages. So this intercultural literacy is crucial for the 21st century because as you can agree, right now we operate in this global world. Just by sitting online, you can interact with people from different countries. You can work with people from different countries. You can have teammates across the globe, which is actually one of the things about Studenthubgh, because Studenthubgh, my organization, we have team members in Ghana, we have a team member in the US, and I am usually in France or Spain, but we are able to collaborate and create programs to support young people to develop really relevant skills for the future. So being able to work with people from different parts of the world is one of the reasons why intercultural literacy has become so important in the 21st century. So looking at these skills, I just want to go back to COVID-19 and how it has impacted some of the skills that are important for today, and how it affects literacy in the 21st century. Okay, so in the wake of the COVID-19, there are a lot of issues about education and literacy that came up a lot, and that have become major learnings that we can use to improve the way literacy is taught and the way literacy is learned during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. So the first, of course, was the mass closure of schools. We had so many schools that were closed down with millions of students being forced to study from home. Some schools couldn't switch easily to online learning and had to halt their teaching and learning until they could return to physical classrooms. So that is one major development from COVID-19. Another is the stark reality of the digital divide and educational inequalities. So I think this issue was, I mean, this is something that we all knew, right? That there exist educational inequalities. Personally, educational inequalities was one of the things that motivated me to start to co-build Studenthubgh together with my partner Belinda. I had the opportunity to teach in a rural school after university. So I taught for 1 year, not necessarily a rural, but a peri-urban school, peri-urban high school after my tertiary education. And during that time, I really saw firsthand the educational inequalities that existed in my country, Ghana. So I witnessed the lack of opportunities that students who are in the peri-urban centers, students who are in rural areas have to contend with. You know, the quality of learning and teaching is not the same. They have limited access to books and to the right material to really position them for success. And they even have limited access to mentors, people they could look up to, who could really motivate them in their education. And that for me was one of the main reasons I was eager to start Studenthubgh. The aim of starting Studenthubgh was to do our part to bridge this divide and to help students access mentors and access quality support, irrespective of where they are born or where they are growing up or the schools that they get the opportunity to attend. And so this is something that for me has been very real. And growing up, one of my passions has been rural outreaches, and I've been involved in a lot of rural outreaches into rural communities. So I know this firsthand, and I think a lot of us do in our various countries. But COVID-19 really brought out how massive this inequality is. And the other thing that was realized is that the educational inequalities and therefore the literacy gap that exists affects the kind of information people get, right? So the people who are already having low access to education, low access to literacy and other opportunities are the people who had to struggle to get the right information about COVID-19. Most of the data and information about this virus and the measures that had to be taken were online, they were in English, they were shared on mediums that were not accessible for these people, and they had limited access to information. So I think if COVID-19 taught us anything, it taught us that literacy is literally a survival skill. Like we need to teach various literacy skills because it can save people's lives. And more importantly, we need to make sure that everyone has, as much as possible, equal access to quality education and quality, the same opportunity to develop their literacy skills. The other thing was the digital divide. So we know, of course, over 50% of the world's population do not have access to, to internet and other digital tools. And a lot of these people are in developing countries. Now, when education moved online and schools had to teachers had to teach online and move their classes online using various apps and methods, a lot of schools and other people in rural areas in developing countries who cannot access internet or where internet is too expensive were left out, So there are students who could not continue their education because they couldn't access the internet, or if they could access, it was too expensive to keep learning every day using internet. So this inequality has become very clear through COVID-19, and it's not something that we can ignore. It's something we have to take seriously and accept, and then looking into the future, see how best we can innovate to solve some of these challenges. Another inequality I was just thinking of is people with special needs and adult learners and the inequality they face in terms of literacy and educational opportunities. So getting more adult learning opportunities and making sure that people with special needs, people living with various disabilities and therefore having special needs are not left out when we are innovating for education, because then when we have a situation like COVID-19 where they are not able to access the regular means of learning, they are going to be left out and they are not going to get the right opportunities. So these are some of the important learnings from the COVID. The other thing is the unpreparedness of local infrastructure, programs, and people to adapt. We also, in various communities, how schools and policymakers, teachers even, and students had to quickly learn how to adapt to this new normal, to this new system of learning online. Schools who did not have online learning tools had to quickly find solutions. Some couldn't find solutions till now, or their solutions were not possible for the students to use. We also saw teachers trying to adapt to teaching online where they are not used to, and making the best of that. So what we've learned from COVID-19 is that we all have to be prepared. We have to, as I mentioned, that digital literacy is a crucial skill for the 21st century. And irrespective of your role, whether you are a learner or a teacher or an educator or a policymaker, we have to, or even a social innovator, we have to educate ourselves on being digitally literate in our field. So in this particular instance, being digitally literate in the educational field or the educational sector, learning how to innovate for education, learning how to teach, with digital literacy at the back of your mind, learning how to learn as a learner, learn how to make the most of online learning tools. And these are really crucial things that we learned from COVID-19 and which we must use to guide our way forward post-COVID. I think the last learning which I found really exciting is the potential for edtech and young innovators. So some of us have been advocating for edtech, advocating for online learning for a while now, and people have been a bit slow, I must say, in some countries to adapt to online learning, online training. It seems difficult, it has its challenges, some may say it's not as interactive, but we also the potential for innovators. We saw that there's a lot more that can be done with EdTech, okay? So for Students Hub, for example, what we did was we run online training programs, especially skills training programs, and we had been using a third-party platform for a while now. Now, when COVID struck and we saw the importance, we've always known this, but then we saw again how important it was to upgrade the methods by which we teach students online, to make it more interactive, to create the community bond for them as they learn online. We took the initiative to build our own digital learning platform, which I'm very excited about. And we are currently rolling it out with our current cohort for our African Future Leaders Fellowship. So that was really exciting. And I saw a lot of young innovators coming up with edtech solutions, and also policymakers and foundations and organizations making funding and grants available for education solutions for various people. And that was really exciting. And I really hope that we continue to take the matter of education and literacy seriously and continue to do this post COVID-19. So the question is, what next? Okay. So we've learned a lot from COVID. We've seen some of the gaps in literacy in our education system. What next? What do we do to fix these problems and to make sure that we do not lose the momentum we have at the moment, and that we are able to prepare ourselves for the future of education, the future of literacy? I think as we do this, as we prepare for these important milestones and important innovations that are going to come in the education sector, we shouldn't lose sight of some of these important things, and I'm going to talk about them in more details in the next slides. But first is accessibility. We have to think about making accessibility front and center in whatever innovation, whatever education solution we are going to use, we are going to promote, or we are going to make available to people. We really want to be part of the solution in bridging the education gap, in bridging the access to information gap, in bridging the literacy gap. And to do that, we need to make sure that the educational tools we use are accessible. Then again, what about the low internet access zones? So what about the areas where there is low internet, there is no internet? How do we solve that problem? How do we innovate for it? Then local flavor, international mindset. How do we make sure that we are thinking about preparing people to be, intercultural minded and to have intercultural literacy in our education system and in whatever education solution that we use as educators or that we create as innovators? And then finally, how are we preparing people to be future ready? How are we preparing people with the relevant skills and training they need to succeed in the 21st century, and not limiting the kind of education that we have? So I want to talk a bit more about these, and I have some interesting examples which I think may be interesting for everyone to look at. So the first, with accessibility, as I mentioned, we need to develop and use platforms that enhance literacy of people with special needs. So people with learning challenges, learning disabilities, people with, people who are limited in their movements, people who have hearing challenges. We have to develop and use educational tools and platforms that allow us to bridge that gap between them and everyone else, that allows them to be able to access the same level of education, information, to be able to build their literacy skills without being left behind. So I think that is very important, and it's great to see that there are different types of assistive technology out there for learning and teaching people with special needs, and helping educators to have a fresh curriculum, okay, and not be stuck with outdated material. So there's a lot of assistive technology out there that are helping educators to build more current, curriculum, and make sure that people with special needs are included. And I wanted to highlight Flipgrid, which I found to be super interesting. So first of all, it's free to use, and it has a lot of accessibility features. So it's a video discussion platform where educators can bring together their students for interactive discussions and create a community. But some of the interesting features that they have is the use of captions. So even as it's a video platform, captions are enabled so that people with hearing challenges can partake in these discussions. It has immersive reader integration so that people with learning challenges are still able to take part in the discussions and read the captions without being left out. It has speech to text, and it allows people to navigate the platform with keyboard, which I think is super important and super relevant, so that people with these kinds of challenges are not left out as we try to educate them. So it's great and important for educators, policymakers who work with people with special needs to think about how to include them, even as our education system is changing so rapidly. And we can include them by incorporating some of these technology in the solutions that we use, in the solutions that we find, and in the solutions that we create. The other thing is, how about people who live in low internet zones? Okay, so how about the people in the students in rural areas and students where who may have access to internet, but it's so expensive they can't rely on it to study all the time. We need to advocate for more reasonable data prices, of course, and do our best to advocate for extension of internet services to more areas. But in the meantime, as educators, social innovators, and learners, I think some of the quick wins and the quick solutions are using and creating apps, using and creating platforms that allow for learning at learning where the data cost is super low. So apps and platforms which use relatively low data, or which are SMS based or USSD based. So one example I like to highlight is Mshule in Kenya, and their solution is pretty interesting because it's a mobile learning management platform, and it brings together the whole community involved in the child's learning. So the students, the parent, the teacher all have access to this platform, and they can be involved in the progress of the child without having to always be online. So even in communities where data is an issue, all these stakeholders can be brought together to ensure that children are getting the best education and learning opportunities possible. Another interesting feature is really condensing local curriculum into SMS, so condensing local curriculum and transmitting it to students via SMS. So you don't need to have a phone which is super techy or super modern, but any phone which can accept SMS messages will be able to use Mshula, and that will allow for more of such innovations, will allow us to include more students who live in these kinds of communities. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is local flavor international standards. So how do we ensure that we are helping people to build intercultural literacy? How do we ensure that as we are doing that, we are not losing the local flavor of our education, or we are not losing, students are not missing out on their own education? How do we ensure that it is easy for people to learn other languages without necessarily having to travel to the country before they can register for a class to learn that language? And I like to highlight two organizations that I think are doing great. So I don't know how many of you know Duolingo. It's a pretty popular language app. It has a gamified approach to teaching languages and currently has 38 languages on the app. It's super easy to use, and you can learn any language in a very interactive way. It has a community of learners that allows you to interact with people from around the world who are also learning the language you are learning, and really become part of this community, learn about different people and their culture. And I think it's an amazing app. So if you want to learn languages and haven't heard of this app, this is a great recommendation for you. The other app I think is super cool, and I know there are a lot of other examples I could use, but I just chose to highlight this two, is Ilimo. I loved it because it has a really interesting way of telling African stories in a fun way. it allows children to engage with African culture, African stories, and be reminded, of that culture. So it really trains children on the local flavor thing that I was talking about, their local culture, their local language, their local stories, and it keeps them interactive. It keeps them engaged with this kind of content. So I think it's really important that moving forward, even as we try to build intercultural literacy, we must engage in these ways. We must find ways to teach people about their culture in a way that is relevant, that is fun, that is relatable for them. And then we must also teach people how to interact with people from different languages, different cultures, and be able to build community irrespective of where they live. Okay, and the last thing is future ready skills. So, as I said in the beginning, literacy and its definition is always changing, and a lot has changed now in the 21st century. Take digital literacy alone, and it's always changing. The kind of digital technology you need to know to be successful in your career in the next 5 years might be totally different. It might probably be something that has not been invented yet. So it's always changing. We need to be lifelong learners, and not just learners of books and writing, but learners of the current technology, the current way of doing things in our sector, the current way of teaching, and the current way of learning. And we must teach students, we must adapt our current curriculum and our current teaching methods to support students to adopt these skills and be ready to implement them in their lives. So as students have, for example, just using us as an example again, one thing we do with our program, we have the African Future Leaders Fellowship Program, which is a program we open to students from across Africa. And that was important to us because we wanted them to be able to interact together, to form a community of young people from different African countries, to learn about the different cultures in the various African countries. And the curriculum of the African Future Leaders Fellowship is structured to not just teach students about maybe career development and entrepreneurship, but also give them the important soft skills that we know are relevant for them to succeed in the world. So, for example, networking, we have to be literate in how to network. We have to be literate in how to communicate, how to present ourselves. Leadership is something that we teach in the African Leadership Fellowship. Communication, and we teach all these soft skills. We try to give them a holistic training so that they succeed in whatever they do afterwards. And I think that is important, that going forward, our education system incorporate some of these important soft skills that are really relevant for the future of work, for the future of this generation that we are currently training. I think some of the organizations that are doing great in this sector is Google with the digital skills training, super relevant for everyone, but especially for people who are going to be working in marketing or as entrepreneurs, or those skills are relevant for everyone. So you can check out Google digital skills and upgrade your digital skills that way. Then I want to highlight Bridge for Billions, which is an organization that I work with as well. And what Bridge is doing is super amazing, because Bridge is supporting people everywhere around the world to build their entrepreneurship skills and to be able to build a business irrespective of where they are. And the methodology and the platform is created to be very interactive, very hands-on. And by the time you've gone through the program, you would have developed a business that is really innovative, and that is a business that is going to make an impact in your community. I think what Bridge is doing is important because we need to develop more entrepreneurs. We need more solutions for every sector in our economy, from education to health. And we need entrepreneurs, social innovators, and change makers to make this. So entrepreneurship skills and making entrepreneurship skills accessible has become very important, and is one of the solutions Bridge for Billions offers. I think in addition to Bridge, there are lots of organizations out there offering similar opportunities. So literally now you have no excuse, okay, irrespective of where you are and what you want to learn or what you want to become or the skills that you think you are missing. You have almost no excuse. You have all the tools at your fingertips to build the relevant skills and to become the kind of person that you want to be. So these are some other tools that I recommend that you check out in both as educators and as learners. As educators, I think Google Classroom and Canvas are amazing if you want to build online courses and your school currently doesn't have an online program. You can easily do that on Google Classroom or Canvas for free. You can build your courses. You can invite your students there. You can interact with them. You can create forums where they can interact with each other, and so that they are not left out as schools are closed. So these are really great platforms to take advantage of. And then, of course, there is Zoom and Google Meet. Google Meet is free for as many people as you want. I think 200 though. So Google Meet and Zoom are really great tools if your students have internet access and you can meet with them for discussions and for interaction or for one-on-one coaching. Do use these tools and many others that you can find online. I think no educator has to be left behind. There's always a way to reach your students. If they don't have mobile access, you can check out Blackboard and some of these other apps that allow for delivery of SMS messages and SMS learning. So let's take advantage of the tools that are available to make sure that all students can get access to the support they need to build their literacy skills in this season and beyond. I don't know if there are any questions as I bring it to a close.
Afia, thank you so much for the impressive presentation. Your passion for literacy is reflected in who you are, what you say, and what you do. And it's impressive what the challenges that you're facing during COVID and post-COVID, and how Student Hub is addressing those.
Okay,
I would like to remind the viewers that we would be taking some questions right now. As we wait for the questions, Afia, I wanted to know, this year, the literacy team this year, they're focusing on how governments and national actors can develop policies, practices, and systems that makes a visible connection between literacy skills and technical and vocational skills. Would you like to shed some light on how Student Hub is doing that, and why do you feel that's important to create citizens who are more holistic, who are more productive in their community?
Yes, so definitely, as I mentioned in the last part, I talked about the importance of entrepreneurship and as part of literacy learning, the importance of entrepreneurship and innovation. So definitely it's crucial that governments are involved in creating these kinds of opportunities for young people, connecting their vocational skills with their literacy skills so that they have the ability to make practical change wherever they are or they find themselves in their community. Because at the end of the day, in Africa, for example, the African continent and many countries in Africa have a large youth population. So there's always the issue of employment and finding the right jobs, and underemployment is always a challenge. But having literacy skills and knowing how to communicate, how to network is great. But what if you can't find a job afterwards to implement these skills or to succeed in that career that you've chosen? So in order to actually succeed and to make this work, to make literacy skills relevant in the 21st century, it's important that in addition to this, students are taught entrepreneurship, they are taught the right vocational and technical skills, that they are taught to have the mindset of being solution oriented and for us as Student Hub GH, for example, that's something that we really incorporate into all our training, supporting the students we work with to be really solution oriented, to be innovators. We want them to go out there and become solutions to the challenges in their community and the problems they identify in their community. So I think that entrepreneurship teaching, technical and vocational skills are all very relevant, because you're equipping students with the right tools to create a future for themselves and to implement solutions that they want to see in the world wherever they are.
Interesting. I want to shift a bit gears here right now. We were talking about digital literacy and digital divide and how it's all connected. I was wondering, how do you reach a particular disadvantaged population group, let's say women or girls? Is there a specific strategy you use to reach them, where you feel that it may not be effective to use the same skills and strategies to reach them as in a normal way? So what are some specific highlighted strategies you use to reach a specific vulnerable population, let's say?
Okay, so yes, that's totally right, and I think when I was talking about inequalities, I didn't bring in the issue of gender, but that is also is, for example, in our first cohort of the African Future Leaders Fellowship, we had majority of the students being male, and then even with the female students we had, very few of them completed. So what we did in the next cohort was to be intentional about creating a balance in the percentage of male and female students that we added to the program. And then being very inclusive in our communication, making sure that the female students in the program feel empowered and that they know that they are being treated the same. They have, because of course they are, they are the same as the male. There's no difference in the capacity of a male or a female to learn or to succeed. And I think many females have proved it over and over, which is why I didn't highlight a lot on it, because I think this shouldn't even be a conversation in the 21st. Like, do women and men have the same capacity for literacy skills building? Yes, of course we do. So what we do is we make sure that we have an equal percentage of males and female in our cohorts, and that they all feel equally empowered, that the females get any support they need to feel like they belong in the program, that they have the same capacity to succeed, that they can succeed. I think when working with female students, sometimes they constantly need that reminder of not being of being equally capable and of being able to succeed, and we just need to give them that reminder and they are good to go. I think I've seen a lot of our female students, our female fellows really succeeding and excelling. They are just as innovative, they are just as creative as the male fellows. So there really isn't that divide there from what we see in our programs, and they just need the right encouragement.
Interesting. I would like to read out a question from a viewer. How can we educators help progressive learners without having physical contact with them?
Okay, so I think I mentioned in some of my slides about helping learners with special needs and how to make that possible, even in a remote situation. So I think using technology can help a lot. Using technology and creating a curriculum that fits the needs of these students in progressive education is really important. I think the curriculum should be structured in such a way that students are taught to be creative and innovative. So they are not learning. They are not just memorizing things and putting it out. If we want students to excel and to be really innovative students, we have to structure a curriculum that allows to explore their creativity, to explore their innovation. I think one of the things we do at Studenthubgh, sorry, I keep using that as an example, but one of the things we really do is, and I always tell our students this, that our course is not structured to be about learning and telling us what you read or what the facilitator said. It's really about thinking and coming up with your own ideas. So we give students a lot of assignments where they have to maybe work in groups. They have to come up, for example, with a solution for a challenge in their African country or in their community. They have to come up with an innovative solution to that. We give them these kinds of challenges, and our program is completely online. So I would say it's about adapting your curriculum, your assignment. So the assignment doesn't have to be a quiz on what was taught. It can be an assignment where they have to come up with a solution to a challenge. They have to be creative. They have to work in teams. And I think these are elements that we can include to make that more progressive learning.
Thank you for that, Afia. Would we like to take more questions? As I wait for more
Sure.
questions to come in, to
Okay.
ask you, during COVID, we literally, in my country, we went to online learning overnight. And although the tech part was there, and I noticed in my nephew's school, for example, the teachers were not prepared to put their content online. So teachers overnight became this instructional designer, tech guru, and everything all together. The roles overnight changed. How do you feel government or NGOs should support teachers in upskilling themselves first, or let's say simultaneously, as we are talking about improving students' skills? Do you think is it happening? Any examples you can give?
I think that is a very important point to bring out, that teachers are not left out. When we are talking about education and when we are innovating for education, that we do not leave out teachers and educators who have to be trained and supported um, to make this impact in the lives of the students. I think for example, in Ghana, what I remember the government doing was actually creating the platform for for the teachers to use. So the government created a platform with the courses and programs online that students could access, and students could access directly, and teachers could be involved in helping their students get that access. So in this situation, the teachers didn't have to necessarily create everything from scratch themselves. And I think there's a lot of innovations. There's a lot of things that social innovators are doing. Like what I said about Canvas. Canvas is free for teachers, and Canvas already has the technology and everything in place. And I think Google Classrooms as well. So that all teachers have to do is put that course online, and they have the guidance on how to run the course for the students, how to onboard the students, and it makes it super easy. Well, I wouldn't say super easy because it depends on your tech level, but it makes it easier, than having to create it from scratch. So I will first of all encourage teachers at the moment, at this current time, to take advantage of the tools that are available. And I highly recommend Canvas because I used it for a while. We used it to run 2 cohorts of Studenthubgh programs, and it was super helpful for us. And then I also recommend Google Classrooms as well. I think on the another solution that should really happen in this COVID period and beyond, as we think of equipping teachers, is creating more training opportunities for teachers. Now that we see the importance of digital learning and digital education, I think it should be part of the training that teachers are offered in the training colleges. So, digital literacy should not be incorporated into every part of our education system, including the training colleges where teachers are trained. It should be incorporated into their curriculum. They should be supported to learn how to use digital tools to teach, how to create their curriculum online, how to support their students remotely, where teachers are trained to support children or for children with disabilities and youth with disabilities, this kind of training should also be added, how to use the right technology to support their learners. So I believe it should be incorporated into our curriculum, and it's something that we should look at seriously moving forward.
Thank you for that, Afia. I truly believe like having a more supporting the ones who support us, which is teachers, is to have targeted education and targeted skills to support them, because then we're going to have a larger impact, value, and both quantitative and qualitative. I just want to see if we have more questions from audience if we can take in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
If not,
totally. I totally agree with what you're saying. We definitely should we should make the teachers training a priority now, as we see the struggles that came during the COVID period and the challenges that came during the COVID period. So we should make the training of teachers in digital literacy a priority. And as I mentioned with adult learning, I think currently teachers who've already completed their training and are teaching, that both the schools and then other NGOs and organizations should be involved in creating opportunities for teachers to upgrade their digital literacy skills, like making some of these tools accessible to them. Schools taking the responsibility to get some of the software, integrate it into their learning, and then make it available to teachers. So I think this is great. This is great to take note of going forward.
all right. Afi, I just wanted to ask my last two questions. During the COVID, we noticed the great digital divide that really become more visible in front of our eyes. The one who have computers, connection, access to a certain programs that a lot of other people don't have. How do you feel tech companies, communication companies, mobile phone companies reacted to it? Did they show the social responsibility during this time, or do you think more needs to be done to advocate?
Honestly, I'll say no. I mean, I think it was one of the big things I was always commenting on and really passionate about. I'm currently not in Ghana. I'm in Madrid, but I was observing the situation in Ghana as schools were locked down, and I was really looking forward to seeing some mobile companies and communication companies come out to offer some data, relief or some solutions for students, knowing that data is really expensive in most African countries like Ghana, and it's not accessible in a lot of the towns and cities. So it was really, really, I mean, it was a bit disappointing to not to see that, not to see them taking up that social responsibility and giving those solutions as quickly as possible. So I think definitely we want to see more from these companies. We want to see them, especially in, sorry, I keep referring to Africa, but I know the data costs in Africa are super high, and we want to see these companies rise up and the government also respond to make sure that prices are reasonable and more students can get access to digital platform, because a lot of people are excluded just by not having access to technology, and we need to work hard on that. That being said, I know there are a lot of solutions that help students to access things online, even with low data. And we as social innovators always have to have that in mind when we are creating. We have to create solutions that are not data heavy, that can be used with the minimum data. We have to create solutions that are super mobile friendly because not everyone has access to a laptop. We have to use other technologies that can be helpful and that can help avoid, the use of data, such as mobile, such as SMS and USSD. And we have to be careful to incorporate these. I think there is a solution. I don't want to comment a lot because I don't remember the name. I think it's Brick or something that offers internet access in a very innovative and unique way. So this is something we need more innovation from. I usually like to take the solution approach, when the problem looks big and you have to wait on others to solve it. I like to take the solution approach, like what can be done whilst you're waiting for these big telcos to make a decision. I think young innovators can take up this challenge. Like, how can we get internet to more people? Take up this challenge and come up with great innovations.
Thank you so much, Afia. That was a brilliant answer and reflection. I hope any companies watching this would take a note of that.
Yeah, I hope so.
On that note, I just want to wrap up with my last question, and I want to focus on your journey. You mentioned you read a lot, and
Yes.
I just wanted some tips on how can we read more for pleasure, more to expand our minds than just, to become, a professional. I want to know any tips you can suggest with the viewers. Reading for pleasure, to expand our minds, our hearts.
Okay, I think one of the things that really pushed my reading journey was my mom, because when I was young, my mom worked, she had a full-time job, and when we closed from school, she didn't have anywhere to take us but the library. So she took us to the library, and then we read until she closed from work and could pick us up. And we really adopted that reading habit from that age. And my parents were always buying us books. And even though these seem really simple tricks or simple methods, I think they are really important. And parents kids to the library. So I think this is also a challenge for government and cities where there are no libraries, making sure libraries are available, that books are accessible. Where there are no libraries, we have to think, how can we make books available to students, whether we can create small places, like places maybe in the local center, in the church, or wherever it's possible, where students can go and read and share on this. I think it starts with building that habit, and one that adopts that habit, most likely they are going to be readers for life. And even when they are older and they may not have the time to sit and read a full book, they will find other ways to learn.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that tip. Really appreciate. Afia, what you do is so inspiring, and the way you think and the interconnections you make, I wish more people would do that, because it's simply beautiful, and the impact you're going to make and you do make is very far wide reaching with that thought process and that reflection and that empathy. So on that note, I just wanted to thank our viewers. Until next time, thank you to our team at the Opportunity Desk. Thank you, Afia, and thank you to our viewers. I hope you learned a lot today. And if you have any thoughts, comments, you can just tweet us at Opportunity Desk. Until next time, have a good evening and good night.